Hello again, everybody. I said hello. Hey, excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday we had a legendary drummer on the stage, and today we've got another legendary drummer on the stage. The next guest is the man who played drums on David Bowie's second album, the album that we call Space Oddity these days, or sometimes we don't, that one anyway. He was also, of course, a member of David Bowie's famous proto-glam group, Hype, and he is the man who introduced David Bowie to his friend Mick Ronson. So the part that he played in David Bowie's story is absolutely pivotal and cannot be underestimated. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage, in conversation with his good friend Gary Burnett, Mr. John Cambridge.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much, organisers, for inviting us to speak here. We're very honoured to do that, especially on Paul McCartney's 80th birthday in Liverpool. So, a great honour.
Zach the Juggler.
John and I are going to talk about a book that we wrote together during lockdown, really. And tell a few stories from the book. We have some copies on sale, thank goodness. We thought that we'd missed the opportunity. But after the panel that John does next, you'll be available to sign, I believe, yeah? Okay?
Okay. Before we start, I'd just like to say, somebody once told me, he said, because I'm not used to doing this talking to an audience, I'm usually sat at the back, and out the way, So being up front, it's a different kettle of fish for me. But someone did say that it's a lot harder to speak to an audience. It's a lot easier to sing to an audience, right? So for my first number tonight, I'd like to... no, forget it.
Probably gives you an idea of what to expect, anyway.
No singing.
Okay. Right, John, Little John as a cowboy. Tell us a little bit about your family, your background, where you came from, and how you got into drumming.
I'm from Hull. My mum and dad, different places. My dad was from a place near Barnsley called Goldthorpe. Anybody? Yeah? Goldthorpe, Doncaster. Yeah. Somebody got a gun out there, I'm not... So... Woo. So, so, take your time. And David's father, he lived in the town about 10 miles away, so they could have been neighbours, So, I was brought up in a council flat in Hull, and I wanted to be in a band, but to be in a band, you either had to pick a guitar up and learn the chords, learn to tune it. To be a singer, you had to be a front man, which is I am not a front man. So I thought, be a drummer, you just hit them, So I decided I'm going to be a drummer.
But living in a flat must have been difficult. How did you get by with that?
Oh, the neighbours. I mean, our flat, it was one of them flats where there was neighbours this way, neighbours that way, and that way, So I couldn't really practice in a drum kit. So I had another sort of method what I used. This was my drum kit. I used to put Beano books out in front of me, and I didn't even have any drumsticks. I didn't think you can go and buy drumsticks. I used to use my mum's knitting needles, but the thicker the better, So and that's how I started to play along with the records.
Okay, and then you finally bought a real drum kit.
Yeah, from this shop here. This is a shop in Hull called Cornell's. It's also where Mick Ronson bought his famous Les Paul black guitar, or his gold guitar, but which it was black when we bought it. In fact, I was there the day when Mick was with him when he got his guitar. He used to have a Fender Telecaster, and we was playing in Cleethorpes. And so we're going to the shop about 4:45, they're about to shut. And Mick walked in with his Telecaster and put it in part exchange, and he put it on the sort of counter. And they just showed him, he opened the box, said, "There's your Les Paul, Mick." And he went, he never even took it out of the box, at the case. She just didn't write, and we just went straight to the gig. So he never even tried his guitar until we did this gig. Yeah.
Now, in the book, we look at some of the early bands you were in, ABC, the Gonks, but there was one band in particular that was actually to be quite significant later on in the story, the Hullabaloos. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The Hullabaloos. The Hullabaloos were a band in Hull. They started out as a band called Ricky Knight and the Crusaders, a little sort of like semi-pro band. And they ended up, some guy in Hull took over them and made them professional. They had a gimmick, they dyed all their hair blonde, and they went to the States. And they come quite big in the States. I mean, if you have a #1 hit in, say, Texas, it's like you'll sell more records there than you would in, say, England. And there was like bands like the Hollies and the Nashville Teens were supporting the Hullabaloos. So when they came back to Hull, as bands do, and they were sort of packing in or, you know, disbanding. And there was a little advertisement in the Daily Mail, the local Hull paper, and all it said was, professional group required drummer. I was 16 at the time, so I answered it, and I went for an audition, and I got the job. Also, the lead guitarist from Hull, he'd patch it in, and they'd advertise for someone in their melody maker. And he got the job, and they called him Mick Wayne. Now, we'll come to Mick Wayne in the future, because Mick Wayne was actually the guitarist who played the guitar on Space Oddity, you know. So, and that's Mick Wayne there, look.
Yep,
Looks like,
okay.
we used to call him Nasher, because he looked like Dennis the Menace, you know, his dog.
So do you remember being asked to actually join the Rats? And how did that come about?
Yeah, I was in a band called ABC. Not the ABC of the records. We was in a band called... Funny enough, Steve Marriott out the Small Faces gave us our name. We was called, I think, The Attack before that, and we kept doing these gigs, you know, pretty sort of like ballrooms and that, and with the Small Faces. And we said, we were all sharing the same dressing room. And Steve Marriott was there, and we said, we're about changing our name. And he said, why don't you call yourself ABC? So I said to him, well, why? He said, it's fucking everywhere. You know, everywhere, ABC, this, ABC. So we call ourselves ABC. Then, when I was in ABC, Mick asked me to join the Rats. They was playing in France, and I didn't really fancy it, you know. So I didn't go to France. They came back, and then he asked me again would I join the Rats. And I did, and I always remember Mick saying to me, he said, I've always been in band with good drummers, you know. He said, and that's why I wanted to join. I said, oh, cheers, Mick. I said, I've always been in bands with good lead guitarists. I said, but in your case, I'll make an exception, you know. He took it as a joke, anyway.
Now, there are lots of stories in the book about your sort of escapades with the Rats. Tell us about the time you went on holiday.
On holiday, yeah, the Rats used to have a van like this, and it was from Needless Chocolate Place. And what it was old shelves going down. You look down the back of it, and you had shelves. And we cut the shelves out. We partitioned the back off where all the gear went, and we made the shelves into sort of bunks so we could sleep, you know, on the way to the gig or whatever. So someone suggested, he said, why don't we go on holiday as a camper van? So Mick said, yeah, I'll go. I said, yeah, I'll go. And then we went with two of the roadies. And so I said, where are we going? And so we said to Chris the roadie, you know, you decide, you picked it, said we're going to Seaside. So all down the East Coast where I live, you've got Withensea, Bridlington, Scarborough, Whitby, Hornsea. So I said, OK, then which one we're going to? He said, Great Yarmouth. only then, when we went that long ago, it was only ordinary Yarmouth. It wasn't that great, you know. And this is in Great Yarmouth. And what we used to do, you know, where do you park the van? Now, you know, a van like that. Now you'd have to go to a camper park or, you know, some caravan park. No, but in them days, we just went straight to the prom. Right to the prom front, no yellow lines then, no parking wardens, no meters, right on the front, and we parked it there. And we was near some toilets, which was a bit of a convenience for us. And, and we also parked near the swimming baths, and as you can see, the swimming baths. I remember one day, though, we'd gone to the swimming baths, and we went there, and it was half day, and we'd got there about 12 o'clock. Don't open until 1 o'clock. So we thought, oh, we went to the pub. So we get back about quarter past 1, goes into the baths. Now, it didn't happen, but someone says they may put chemicals in the water, you know what I mean, to see if you've done you know what I mean, don't you? Well, luckily they hadn't, because if they had, we'd have been swimming up in the aisles like the Red Arrows, honestly. You know, that's it. So this was it. So we used to do this, and then we'd sort of go to the cafe, have a sandwich, and then we'd do the normal thing, which is we used to hit the amusements. Mick loved the one-arm bandits and or the bingo when you sat there. You'd sit for ages just playing the bingo, you know. Not them with a double card, just when you knock the things off. And one day I was getting a bit fed up with this, and so I said, why don't we go and let's go into the town a bit more. Let's, you know, do a bit, try and do something different. So I said, okay then. So we had something to eat, and then we just sort of walked towards the town. As we're walking towards the town, this is a true story, honestly. There's these two, like, gypsy ladies coming towards us. I mean, they were the real McCoy, you know, with the bandanas on and big earrings and long dresses to the floor. I remember they had big cardigans on, and they had massive big baskets, you know, full of what they were selling. And as they got closer to us, what the lady in front was going, "Lucky White Heather, get your lucky white heather." Mick went straight up to her. And he went up to her. And we thought, one minute, Mick's on the pull. You know, but a bit old for him. So Mick just went up to this lady and he says, do you tell fortunes? Do you do all this? Because Mick's mother used to read tea leaves and all this sort of thing. We used to get the Daily Mirror, you know, I never bothered reading. So he said, she said, oh yeah, definitely, if you cross my palm with silver. If Mick had said to her, can you put her a gearbox in a Ford Transit? She'd have gone, oh yeah, cross my palm, you know. So she's put his arm on, and she's looking at him, and she's saying this, and saying, well, I'm at the side, and I'm not really into this, and I wasn't really bothered, you know, and I'm thinking, like, hurry up, you know. So she finished with me, and that was it. So I said, all right, we'll go then. And then she says to me, would you like your fortune told? I said, no, you're all right. I said, I'm not bothered. And Mick went, go on, big digging. I said, oh, go on then. So I give her, and she's reading my fortune, you know, and to get away, and I'm not really taking much notice, you know. Until, I always remember it was the very last thing she said to me. And she said to me, have you got anything to do with music? Well, my ears pricked up then, and I thought, you know, I mean, I was dressed like that. You know, if I'd have had, say, you know them buskers when they have a bass drum on the back and, you know, cymbals between the legs and a guitar and harmonica and kazoo, you know, and all that thing. If she'd have said that then, I would have thought, you've been a detective, you aren't you? But she didn't. So when she says anything to do with music, so I thought, I'm not going to give her a clue. So I just thought, why did you ask that? She said, you're going to be very successful at music. So I just thought, oh, take that, thank you very much. With that, Mick comes right up and he shoves his hand right under her nose. And he said, did you say anything about music with me? And she never took his hand. She just looked at me and she went, no. But looking back, I think she was cross-eyed and she was looking at him and talking to me, you know what I mean?
Now, the Rats were a great blues rock and roll covers band. How did you try and change that? Didn't you and Mick get together and try and write something?
Yeah, I mean, I was a massive Beatles fan, especially being in Liverpool. I saw them twice when I was a kid, 14 and 15. And I like the idea of, you know, of John and Paul writing their own songs. And we just used to do covers. And I said to him, why don't we ever go writing songs, you know? So I came up with this idea and I wrote the lyrics and Mick came back down to our house. And I said, it's not going to be about, you know, moon and June and love. I said, it's going to be, it was about a coalman that died. And we called it, and they called him Bernie Gripplestone. So the song was called The Rise and Fall of Bernie Gripplestone. And I got the Gripplestone, actually, from, if you remember the John Lennon film we did with Michael Crawford, and he was called, his character in that was called Bernard Gripweed. So it was a bit, you know, take from that. And so then was my scribbler writer when we was writing it. So we did this song called Rise and Fall of Bernard Gripplestone.
And recorded it
as
well. Now, you played with some incredible names at the time. I mean, it's a kind of who's who of the 60s and early 70s, isn't it? Can you remember some of those in particular, and particularly this experience?
Yeah, there used to be a ballroom called the Skyline, and they used to get all it was a top floor of British Home Stores. And as you can see there, Jimi Hendrix. So we used to just walk straight up the staircase there, straight to the top of the ballroom, and we'd played there a few times, and I just remember going to the dressing room, hey, Jimmy, can you sign us this? Yeah, sign it, and sign my autograph book. And the mandrakes on all. There's Jimmy. Look, he's put to John, stay cool, spelt with a K. And I thought, well, I mean, I'll get Cheers, Noel Redding, and Mitch Mitchell. Sadly, none of them are still with us, are they, today?
Yeah, now the autograph book's quite important later in the story.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
come back
it
to
is,
that
yeah.
later in the story. How did you leave the Rats? What
I didn't leave, I got sacked.
So what happened?
Well, we used to rehearse in, there's a quote here, Woodmansea Village Hall. All right, Mick? It's on the side, yeah. So we used to rehearse at Woodmansea Village Hall, and we'd booked it for Thursday and Friday on the Easter weekend, you know, the Good Friday and the Thursday before. And it was all day, Thursday and Friday. And as Gary said, I think we was doing a cover of a Led Zeppelin song or something. So we did all day Thursday, we did all day Friday. And then at the end of this sort of Friday, they said, oh, we can have the hall for Saturday and Sunday as well. I said, oh, I'm not rehearsing. I said, I'm playing football on Saturday, you know, and I said, I'm going out with the missus on Saturday night. I said, no, you know. And so because I wouldn't do it, apparently, we'll get someone else.
Okay. But actually, it turned out in your favour, didn't it? What happened after that?
Yeah, about 3 months later, I get a phone call from Mick Wayne, who I mentioned who was in the Hullaballoos. And I've been following Mick. Mick was in a lot of bands. He was in a band called Bunch of Fives, Tickle, and he was now in a band called Junior's Eyes. And I used to get the back of the Melody Maker, and you could see where all these clubs, the Marquee Club and Klutz Clique and all these venues, and they was doing John Peel shows, and I thought, oh, I have Junior's Eyes. So Mick rang us up and he said, hi, John. He said, we're playing in Scarborough on Thursday. He said, do you fancy coming down? I said, do I? Yeah, of course I will. So I went down to Scarborough and I caught up with Mick at the Penthouse Club in Scarborough. And when he was there, he says, are you going to get up and do a song with us? And I thought, no, you know, you do that in a sort of pub, you're not in a nightclub sort of thing. I said, no. He went, go on. So the very last song we got up and we did an old Rat song called Rock Me Baby, and did that and thought no more. Said, see you, Mick, and keep in touch. And about 2 days later, he rang me and he said, would you fancy joining Junior's Eyes? I didn't know this, will you get up and do a song with us, was an audition for the rest of the band to see, you know. So I said, yeah, you know. So I went down and I joined Junior's Eyes.
And that was the way you got to London, wasn't it?
And that's how I got to London, yeah.
So in 1969, you were to meet David for the first time.
Yeah, Junior's Eyes were produced by Tony Visconti. And Tony Visconti was also producing at the same time David Bowie and Mark Bolan. And Tony suggested to David, he said, well, instead of me keep getting session musicians in and doing this, a bass player, drummer, why don't we just use your band, Mick, here, Mick Wayne? So he said, yeah, and I said, oh, yeah. So I started recording David's album, and that's how I got to meet David, firstly in the studio. We went for a little meeting first, and he sort of said what sort of stuff he's doing. David was very folky then. He was, you know, I think he was like wanted to be the British Bob Dylan, you know. Yeah.
Okay. And this album, you contributed to this album in a big way, yeah?
Yeah, that's his Speciality album, which I played on, yeah.
And that's actually a signed cover, isn't it? A very rare one, I think.
Yeah, you can't really see it, but it says, to Angie with love and peace, David Bowie. He didn't sign David now, he's always put D. So we played the Festival Hall, and David was in the front. Can you imagine this now? He's in the front in the foyer, and he's got these empty sleeves, and he's putting them up to promote his album. And my wife Angela was there, and she said, oh, can I have one of these, David? And he said, yeah. And he signed it for her. And that's the album, you know. And even when we'd finished the show, this is in the Festival Hall, David went back there, he's collecting all his albums up, you know what I mean? But, you know, yeah.
We looked really closely at this album cover, haven't we? There's something on it, an indentation.
On that one.
Is that on a different
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay. David, on that album, you see, because we was with different labels, it didn't say our names. It didn't sort of say, you know, Mick Wayne guitar, drummer John Cambridge. Didn't mention them, and because I think we was on Regal Zonophone and David was on Philips. So he did get, when I was in Haddon Hall, he got one sent in a cardboard box through the box, and it was the American version of this album. And I opened up inside, and it had all our names on. And I said, oh, David, you've got my name on. Can I have this? Oh, no, Johnny said, I've only got the one copy. Oh, come on, Dave, tell me, Mum and Dad. Oh, look, I'm actually playing on an album. So I pestered him, and he gave me it, and I've still got it. And I was looking at it, and he must have been using it, you know, when you write things out. And there's little doodles on it. I've even got some tracing paper, and it's like he's drawn little aliens on it, you know, and this, you know, so I've still got the album now.
And in order to promote the album, you went on tour with David, didn't you, to Scotland?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
During his eyes, we did a tour of Scotland. And this was the time when David had just bought a new car, well, a new second-hand car. And I went all the way to Scotland with him and his driver, because our band, During His Eyes, there was 5 in the band, including me and the roadie, and they all smoked dope, right? Nothing wrong with smoking dope, but I didn't even smoke Woodbines, you know. And I thought, driving all, and they used to keep the windows up, and I thought, driving all that way to Scotland, and me and that man, no. So I went in the van, the car. And we sort of based in Edinburgh. We sort of got this B&B in Edinburgh, and we sort of based there. So all the gigs round, we sort of started in Edinburgh. And there was one time when I'm in Edinburgh, and we're playing in Kilmarnock. So I'm on the toilet. This should be about 12:30. So I'm on the toilet, and it comes down, ready to go. They're not here. Oh, they'll be outside. Goes down outside. Van's gone. Car's gone. Bloody heck. No mobile phones then. So what do I do? What do I do, you know? Nearest bus station. Single to Kilmarnock, please. You know, gets on the bus. And luckily enough, I mean, like, Kilmarnock, I know it was called the Grand Hall or something. I mean, I could have got to Kilmarnock, and the Grand Hall could have been another 4 or 5 miles away. But as I got off the bus, it's like, if this was the Grand Hall, the bus stop, the station, was across the road, you know. So I gets out the thingy, and there I see Roger, the roadie, and he's loading the gear into the venue. Now then, Rog, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for what? Leaving me. I thought you'd gone with David in the car. You have. No, I haven't. Goes around the corner, there's David just taking his bits and bobs out. I said, you know you left us, David? No, we didn't. You flew the same time as us. Apparently the bus got there at the same time, you know. But yeah, but I did. Have we got the ticket?
We've got the ticket.
And I even kept the ticket. That was basically to say, when they said no, you didn't, I said, look, there's the ticket, look. And apparently it's something like 6 to 8 miles from Edinburgh to, you know, Kilmarnock.
One of the great things about writing the book with John is that there's so much provenance. John keeps, I've never known anybody keep such detailed records of every gig.
Every gig I've started since I was 15, I've just started writing down. And it's carried on, and every recording session I sort of wrote down, you know, and I kept sort of diaries. So, like, when I used to read these books and people would say, have you seen this book on David Bowie, John? You know, and I'd read it and go, that didn't happen. That's not true. That was, you know, that didn't happen. No, that's not wrong. That's wrong, yeah. But I never did anything about it. Even my daughter said, Dad, have you seen on Wikipedia? You're on Wikipedia when it first came out. I said, it's all wrong. So she said, you know you can correct it, you know, and I'm not into social media and all this. I said, no. I said, leave it wrong. I said, it makes me laugh. You know.
What kind of things do people get wrong generally then? What do you find is a common mistake?
Like what do you mean? They say the wrong date. So there was one thing when, you mean about when was it Speakeasy? There was one thing was at Speakeasy. It was David, myself and Angela at the Speakeasy Club. And David is either just got married or he's about to get married. And I'm sort of here and I'm stood with Angie and there's a band on. The band is about where the front row is here. And David is behind me and he's snogging this girl, you know, giving it the big lip, you know. And I sort of turned around and I went, she's just got married or he's getting married. And Angie's obviously seen him. Angie then is... So when Angie turned around and sees him, she sort of like notices it and she sort of grabbed him by the arm. Come on, John, let's go and watch the band. And I'm thinking, what about his, you know, she wasn't bothered. So I'm looking at the band and I'm still looking at David and I'm thinking, you know, where I come from, when you don't do that, especially in front of your wife or your future girlfriend, you know. And apparently someone had said, this isn't I've not quoted this, but someone had said, was because David just keeps everything in sort of like in his head and brings him out at all sorts of time. And in fact, in one book, Paul Trinker's book, when I told him this story, he put on it, and John saw David dancing with a bloke. He changed it. I mean, I've nothing wrong with dancing with a bloke and whatever. But the thing is, he wasn't dancing with a bloke. He was kissing the girl. Just get it right, you know. But why did they have to change these things? So anyway, when we gets back to Haddon Hall and Mick was in there, they'd both been asleep because Mick didn't really drink and he didn't socialise like David and I would do, or you know. I remember David up looking at me, he said, when you go in, he says, tell him you've had a real good time, John, tell him, I'm thinking, what's he on about? So, and someone had said, as I said, this should not come from me, that's supposed to be the John, I'm only dancing from the song, John, I'm only dancing. I'm not snugging this, I'm only dancing. But I don't know whether that's true, but other people have associated it. I mean, if it's true, I'll take it, but I don't know.
Well, we'll come back to that one a bit later as well, because we're kind of looking at myth busting, weren't we? There's a few things when we were researching the book that we thought, wait a minute, there's the opportunity to actually put things right. So you were asked to move into Haddon Hall.
Yeah.
And spent some time with David at the Arts Lab and with his family.
This is a 3 Tons pub in Beckenham, which was David's so-called Arts Lab, yeah.
And recently, we did a little road trip, didn't we?
That's a 3 Tons pub now, as of last month.
It's now a ZZ's restaurant.
Yeah. They call it ZZ's restaurant. It's a pizza place. You would have thought that they called it Ziggy's, wouldn't you? Someone you'd have thought, where's the manager? Yeah.
Okay.
That is now Haddon Hall. There's nothing left of Haddon Hall now. It's the flats.
And isn't it 42 flats?
Yeah, it's 42 Beckenham. What's the address?
Southend Road.
Southend Road, yeah, and it's now 42 flats.
Southend Road. We've got a few photos that we put in the book of Haddon Hall. Tell us about who's in the photos and what's happening.
Yeah, this photo, obviously, there's Angie in the middle, captain. Me there with the blue jumper and David there with the striped one, and we're just playing football in the back garden. I mean, not only have I played drums for David, I've played football with him. Yeah. He's not a bad footballer either.
And we tried to find it, didn't we? This
is part of the back garden, what I think we're still there.
Yeah. And that photo in particular was to become quite important, wasn't it?
Anita, she used to work for Tony Blair apparently after this. And she just photobombed us. We was going to take a photo of Dave May, when you stand on the football. And she sort of just stood in and photobombed us, yeah.
We also met some of David's family as well.
Yeah, Terry, his brother. I remember Terry had come to Haddon Hall to see David, and there was very close, but he wouldn't be in our company. David would go in another room, we'd talk to Terry. And it was at Cane Hill, wasn't it, the hospital? And on the night time, we was going to drop him off. And so we was in the van, Roger was driving, and he said, we'll just drop Terry off at the bus stop in Beckenham. So we goes to the bus stop, drops Terry off, and right, see Terry, and he went. So we said, we went for the old Wimpy bar, we were going to get a burger. And as we were coming back, we were driving past the bus stop, and David said, slow down a minute, will you? And the queue was still there, so the bus hadn't been, but no Terry. So David said, I'll pull up. He said, I know where he'll be. And there's a pub right near the bus stop. We opened the door, and there's Terry at the bar. Oh, hi, David. So he said, I'm just waiting for the bus to come. Come on, David. Come on, you're going to miss it if you don't. And, I'm coming then, yeah. By the time we got outside, the bus had gone. So we ended up taking Terry back in the van. And I'm sat in the van with Terry, and we're having a bit of a talk, and I'm really surprised how his football knowledge. I mean, at the time, Hull City, where I come from, was something like the old Division 3. And he said to me, you're from Hull, John? Yeah, and in football, your football team, he named all the forward line, all Hull City's forward line. It's like someone now saying, I can name the forward line, of like Essex or, something like that, He just nailed them all off, And we just dropped him off and came back.
Now, this is another one. Were you David's best man at his first wedding?
Tony Visconti, I'll get this right. Tony Visconti was supposed to be the best man. But Tony, I mean, can you imagine now, Tony, I can't come to your wedding, David, I'm doing a session. And I remember he was producing the Strobes. Imagine now, no, I can't make your wedding, David, I'm doing, So David, the night before, said, will I be a witness to the wedding? Myself and Claire Shenson, another girl who was there. I said, yeah, of course I will. And it was at the registry office, and I remember all sat in chairs, and David's only about there in front of us with Angie. I remember saying, can the witnesses come forward, please? And so I got off my chair to come forward, and Claire, she went. And with that, David's mother, Peggy, was in front. She went to the thing in front of me, and I went. So, David looked round at me, and he sort of went. It was all, not my doing, So Peggy went, and she ended up being the sort of witness. But later on afterwards, David said someone was in conversation, and I think David felt sorry for me because he said, they said when David was, they said, and was you at David's wedding, John? And David interrupted and he said, yeah, John was my best man, weren't you, John? And I went, oh yeah.
So what was it like living at Haddon Hall?
I don't know. It was
Moved in by now, hadn't you? And,
yeah. It was just a massive, big, old Victorian sort of place, you know. I know in some of the books it says they call the Creeper Gallery, and it says Woody and Trevor and them. We all slept on the gallery. I never ever slept on the gallery. I was always in the room. Probably he moved them when I left. We was basically sleeping in his living room, you know, which is on the sort of left. David's bedroom was on the right. Visconti's was behind him. So I never slept in the sort of gallery, but so I slept there.
You had a lot of fun though, living there.
Oh yeah, I mean we used to have water pistol fights, and well, honestly we did. And Tony Visconti would come one day, and he'd come with all these little water pistol fight guns, and so we all filled them up. And there was only I don't think Andrew was there. There was just I don't even think Mick had come by this time. I don't think Mick was there. So we'd be going around with these water pistol fights, and so what I did, being the prat I am, I went and got this old fairy liquid bottle, nearly empty. So I squeezed it all out, flushed it out while they were all rushing around there's loads of rooms. And I filled it with water. And I put it under this table. And so I'm chasing David with this water pistol, and he's coming at me, and I'm going, oh, I've none left. And he's going, I'm getting it now. And I went, yeah. Took it all in. That's what he's like. He takes everything in fun, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned John, I'm Only Dancing earlier. I'll just move that on because we said that. But you also were there when David composed some other songs.
A few songs, yeah. After All, when he did Pretty Star, Superman.
After All, what happened there?
When he was doing After All, he would just sit on the floor with his 12-string, and Angie was at the side of him, and I'd never heard the song, and I just sit hearing the chorus going, oh, by jingo, and Angie was singing it in a sort of falsetto's voice, you know, along with him, and I'm just sat there and listening to it, and I just said to David, I said, that sounds pretty good, that, David. I said, you want to get Angie to sing that on the record? And he just looked at me and went, it was all like, don't bloody encourage you.
Okay, so Junior's Eyes was kind of winding up, and David was looking to form a new band with you on drums and Tony Visconti on bass, but they needed a guitarist. So what happened next?
Yeah, when David asked me to join the Hype, he said, when Junior's Eyes was folding up, I thought I'm just coming back to Hull again, and then David said he's forming a band with his drummer. And I remember saying to him, you know, of all the drummers you could have picked in London, why'd you pick me? And he just said, well, he said, I like your drumming, John, I like you as a person. We got on real well. And I thought that was a nice compliment. So we sat in Haddon Hall again, I say in the room where he was, and David's there playing, and they're talking about guitarists, and I hear him mentioning guitarists, and they're sort of saying, we could get so-and-so, and I'm just listening. And because they had originally asked Tim Rennick, who was in Junior's Eyes, and Tim went on to play with Clapton, he was in Pink Floyd for 20 years, George Michael, you know, a very respected guitarist. But he'd been offered a job with Terry Reid Fantasia in America, so he didn't want to do it. So it could have been Tim Rennick in the band. So they're going on about this guitarist. So I happened to say, I know a guitar player who could do the job. And they sort of looked at me and went, and they carried on talking. Well, but you know, I said, no, I know. And they're probably thinking, what does he know? He's a drummer. No, what does he know about guitar playing? So I said, no, a kid in Hull, he's a real good guitarist. You know. And so they went, I said, look, I'm going home. I said, I'm going home before we do our last gig with Juniors and the first Hype gig. You want me to bring him down? They went, oh, yeah, bring him. And they just probably thought I'm going to bring a mate down who's going to come watch the show, you know. So gets back to Hull, and then they had to go and see Mick Ronson to find out. And Mick was then cutting the grass. He was a gardener. And I used to have a little hut where they used to keep all the tools and everything. So I went to this little hut. Where's Mick working? He's working on this school round the corner. Andrew Marvel School, I think it was. Parked my car up, I knew where it was. And it looked about 4 or 5 football rugby pitches. And right in the corner, I could see Mick, and he had his blonde hair, and he had his donkey jacket on, and he had his wellies, and he had his jeans tucked into his wellies. I think that's where they got the idea from, was Ziggy's, you know, the boots. Never mind what boy says, it was from Mick with his wellies. And so I sees Mick, and I'm shouting, Mick, Mick, and he's carrying on, he hadn't even heard me, he was miles away, Mick. And when I got up near to him, and he sort of stopped, and he went, John, what are you doing here? He said, I thought you was in London with that Johnny's eyes. I said, I am. I said, but, and Mick was creosoting a pitch, not white lines, and that's how long ago, he was putting the brown marks on the lines. So I said, they were after a guitarist for this new band. I said, this kid called David Bowie. I said, he just had a hit record, Space Odyssey, been on top of the pops, you know, I said, wants a guitar? I said, you'd come have a go and doing it. He went, oh, no, and he carried on. Oh, no, he said, no. Apparently, a couple of years ago, Mick had been into London and he got ripped off. He'd been there and he got ripped off, come home penniless, and he thought, no, I'm not going to do all that again. No. And I'm walking along trying to, Mick, you've got to cut me, you know what I mean? No, and he's walking along to the end and he sort of turns right to do, and I'm walking, oh, he's gone that way, you know. In the end, I ended up creosoting 3 pictures with him. Yeah, you know. So I said, so I'm thinking at one end I'm trying to say to Visconti and Bowie, yeah, I know guitarists and they're not bothered, one iota. And then at the other end, when I've got the guitarist, Mick's saying, I'm not bothered either. I should have just said, oh, well, let him get on with it. But I persevered and I said, why don't you come down, Mick, we're playing at the Marquee Club. I said, it's going to be Johnny's Eyes' last gig and it's going to be the first one of the Heights gig. And I think Mick, when he thought Marquee Club, when he was in London, he wasn't playing the Marquee Clubs and he wasn't doing John Peel shows and recording, like playing with someone who had a hit record. So he agreed to come. So on that day, I picked him up, went down to the Marquee Club. And this, by the way, is we reenacted this scene for Gary Kemp in the documentary. And that's the football pitch where Mick was right at the back. So imagine, that's where it was. So anyway, it brings Mick down to the Marquee Club and we get there and Roger's just gone tea time and Roger's taking the road, he's putting the gear in. And I said to Mick, sit there, Mick. I said, I won't be a minute. And so by the time we got set up and there was another band on with this time box. So they went on, then Johnny's Eyes went on, moved all the gear, then went. So Mick had never really met David through the show because it was quite packed and he never got time. So when we finished and put the gear down, and I said to Mick, and so Mick come to the stage and I said, Mick, this is David. I said, this is the guy I was telling you about. And he said, oh, just a present. Oh, why are you meeting? Dave just shook his hand and carried on putting his gear away. And that was it. Then we went back to Haddon Hall. And it'd be, I don't know, about 1 in the morning and something like that. And so Mick, there's always loads of guitars hanging about, acoustic guitars. So Mick had bought his electric with him, the electric guitar. So I said, they started just messing about, jamming together. And they was doing that for, I don't know, 3/4 of an hour. Went to bed slept on mattresses, should we say, on the floor. Got up the next morning and they carried on. They carried on doing this, playing this sort of jam together. And Bowie just turned around to me, he said, I'm doing a John Peel show in a couple of days' time, Mick. He said, do you fancy doing it with us? So Mick said, yeah, okay then. So that's how Mick got with David.
And then Mick became a fixture
at
Haddon Hall.
Yeah.
You're on that photo, aren't you, John?
You can just see my haircut. Them were the days, weren't they?
Yeah, about this time, you brought David to Hull as well, didn't you? Tell us that story, it's a great.
Yeah, David had this old Rover 100, and he was sort of saying what we went to Scotland and all this. And he said, I'm going to get my car serviced, and he told me what it's going to cost. And I thought, plumbing heck in Hull, you can buy a car for that, So I said, well, my mate, Muff, who was our old roadie in the Rats, so one of the roadies, I said, he's a mechanic at this garage. I said, bring it there and you'll get it done for 1/4 of the price you're going to pay. I said, and plus you can come and have a look, So David and Angie came, and they stayed at my house with my mum and dad. And Tony and his girlfriend, Liz Hartley, they came and stayed at my now wife, my girlfriend at the time, Angie's house in Beverley. So Tony and Liz, they just did the Beverley scene and looked at all the churches and the minsters. David, Angie, myself and wife, we sort of hit the pubs and did it on the night time. We went into one pub, Gardener's Arms, and I think David had just been on telly doing Space Odyssey. And he had that camel coat on, when he got married him. And as we were walking out the door, someone looked at him and they said, hey, you look just like that David Bowie who's, and David, this is to him. And real casually, as he walked by, he said, oh, I said, a lot of people tell me that. Just walked out the door, yeah.
I've got to ask you this. Your dad sounds a real character. I never met your dad. He sounded a real character. Did he actually say, look at those cavemen go?
I don't know. There's another quote. Someone has said, as I said, David again. My dad would always sit at the window now, and he'd be sitting on the window with his saddle like that. And all the pubs and all the drunks who went back, all the trawler men were always fighting and that. And then my dad would just sit there and he's supposed to say, look at these cavemen go, you know. And Bowie, once again, it's clicked in and someone said, you know, like he used to do, he's a bit of a magpie, was David, and he'd bring things out. I don't know whether that's true, but, you know, yeah.
What about, isn't it true that David played twice in Hull?
Yeah, David did play twice. It was once, there was another local thing about people saying David has never played in Hull. We played at the university, but we also played at the Fignich Club, bingo. I said, I'll take him every Sunday dinner time. There should be a band on. So I said, come on, Dave, we'll go to this local pub, there's a band on. Got there and there wasn't a band on. There wasn't even a stripper on. But they had like what they called a link bingo, all the clubs in Hull, and you could win something like about £50, which was a lot of money then. So there's David, then, I like this, all the fours, 44, all the, so we ended up Bowie playing bingo. So I played football with him, drums with him, bingo with him.
Now then, Hype started doing gigs, didn't they? And remember this one?
Yeah, I don't know which pub that is. But if you can look, there's about, you can't really see, there's about two people at the bottom there. There's even like a poster at the top says, the highlights, country and western. You know, I mean, and how many people have got a photo of like Bowie playing in a pub with about 3 people watching, you know? So yeah, so that was the days. Nobody was bothered then.
Now we get to the important bit, isn't it? The Roundhouse and the dressing up gig.
Yeah.
And glam rock. Tell us about
This
that.
was the glam rock, and I know Woody and Trevor went through the makeup thing and all that lot, you know. And I was asked at the time, "Do you want to put?" We all had different costumes. Boy gave us all different names. He was Rainbow Man, and he's got Lurex tights on and a sort of like silk blouse, big knee-length bugs. Tony was Hype Man, supposed to be Superman with a H. You can't really tell, but he looks more like Ming from Flash Gordon, if you remember, doesn't he? Mick was Gangster Man, and all they'd done with Gangster Man was give him one of David's, there's a few photos of David playing in a gold lame suit. Angie's quoted in one of their books, and she said, yeah, we went out and bought Mick this gold lame suit. No, you didn't, it was one of David's. There's another thing where it's wrong, you know. So, and he was Gangster Man, and guess where I was? Cowboy Man. So, of course, when he was on about putting, like, a little bit of mascara on and things like that, you know, and I said, have you ever seen John Wayne with lipstick on? Exactly. So...
We can watch a little clip if you want.
Hold on. Yeah, go on, yeah.
Let's watch a clip first. OK, so this is Hype, isn't it? For me.
He always was looking right and left or over his shoulder at what might be or what can I do next.
It took me all the 60s to try everything that I could think of to find out exactly what it was I wanted to do anyway. But just about the end of the 60s, it just started to come together.
Strange games they would play then. No death for the perfect men. Life rolls into one for them. So softly a supergod cries.
Through circumstances, I'd run into a drummer called John Cambridge and Tony Visconti and Mick Ronson, and we put together a band called Hype. It was probably my first costume band. As far as I'm aware, that was the very first so-called glam rock gig.
Hype was very important to David's development. This was the only way he could see at that time that he could...
OK, we move on next slide. And then, John, you got something to say?
Right. Yeah, and just that song I was playing there was a song called The Superman, and I'll bring that up a little bit later, so you can see I was playing this song called The Superman. Oh, and by the way... That's the hat. It don't fit now, though. I think it's shrunk. Right.
Now, another one of these Mythbusters. Was somebody wearing a pirate suit?
Oh, yeah, and there's... in one of the books, this is like a Mythbuster, as Gary said, just to get things right in the book. And in one of the books, well, it was Dylan Jones, actually, I'll tell you his name, but this was also pinched from another one. You know, when people write the research and they don't do the research and they just pinch one page and they put it in that page. So Dylan was the second person. But he suggested us all, and he said, and John Cambridge was dressed as a pirate, complete with eye patch. Now I said, wouldn't it be funny if you imagine, reverse that, and imagine Johnny Depp on Pirates of the Caribbean, coming dressed something like that, cowboy hat and all the, you know, and the director saying to him, Johnny, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're supposed to be a pirate, you know. And Johnny Depp says, well, they'll notice. And the director says, yeah, you're right. Action! You know, that's how they get it wrong.
Okay. So hype was pretty short-lived, though, wasn't it? What happened then?
Then I got sacked again. Getting quite used to this all the time, you know.
I'll put this one up because this is a quote that we've talked about, haven't it, when we were doing it. This was, I can't remember which book.
Christopher Sanford.
Christopher Sanford.
Yeah.
What's the truth of this?
Which is, there was a part in my life, and I think Woody's gone through the same thing, when you're telling people, like, magazines will ring you up and books will ring you up, and they basically just want to know the same story. And there was a part in my life when I thought, I'm just fed up of saying the same story. And I bet other people are thinking, oh, not bloody John Cambridge and Boy and Ronta, you know what I mean? So I just thought, right, I ain't doing it anymore. I just don't want to do more. I just keep saying the same thing. So this guy called Christopher Sanford, he sent me a letter. I'm doing a book, John. And this Christopher Sanford, he's one of these writers, he's done one on Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Kurt Cobain. He's one of them, it's his job just to do it, you know. And it turned out he was doing one on Boy. So I didn't answer the letter. Then I got another letter saying similar again. Didn't answer it. Then apparently he must have got my phone number, so he rang me on the phone and said, it's going to print in about a week, can you know? And I told him real polite, I said, no, I said, honestly, I just don't want to do anymore, you know. I said, I'm just being fed up with me, you know. So that was it. And then, in his book, he's mentioned, first of all, it says acknowledgements. I'd like to thank John Cambridge, but I never spoke to him. Never said a word to him. And there's loads of comments in it, which I never said anything. But the main one, what really annoyed me, when he says, David, in the studio, come up to me and says, you're fucking ruining my album, you know. And I thought, well, that never happened. David doesn't talk like that anyway. So why did they put that in? Makes me look, you know.
What actually happened? In your work, what really happened?
No, going back
up to this incident in the studio, what was behind that then?
Well, what it was we was doing a song called The Superman, what you just heard or played there. And we couldn't, it was Mick Ronson's first session. I remember it was 23rd of March 1970. There you go for my dates again. And we was booked from 11 till 4 in the morning to do the single version of Memory of Free Festival. I'd also done that version on the album, Space Oddity album, so I knew that song, only this time there was drums all the way through it, whereas before they just came in at different times. And there was a Moog and all, a Moog, and Mick being what he was, a bit of a keyboard player, he said, if it's a keyboard I can play the Moog. So Mick's in the studio for the first time in Trident. And we got all the backing down quite quick, actually, you know. So Mick came to put the Moog down, and he couldn't do it. Every time he couldn't sort of do it. And there was a guy kept going to the studio, the console upstairs, and he was like real smart dressed, a waistcoat and tie, and Tony, here's them papers, Tony, and I just thought he worked in, you know. And apparently they called him Ralph Mason, and I didn't know at the time, but he was a very experienced musician. And so Visconti said, oh, we're having a bit of a problem with this Moog. Have you heard about these Moogs? And so Ralph went down and he said, yeah, I'll have a go, let me have a go. And he went down and he started messing about. And in the end, Ralph put the track on. And he did it in a matter of minutes, you know. Yeah, is that what you want? Is that enough? Yeah, you know. And I don't know whether Mick was a bit upset because he couldn't do it. It showed his cred was a bit down, you know. That put Mick in a bit of a bad mood, you know. So when we'd finished the Free Festival, they said, oh, we'll have a go at The Superman, which you've already seen me play all the way through. And in the afternoon, Mick and David had been at Haddon Hall, and they'd been in the room, sort of like going over some things. And I'd open the door and go in, and they'd say, no, not now, John, we're doing this, because I thought, you know, in other words, piss off, you know, thought I was going to be messing about. And so I came out. So when we come to this Superman, there was this new bit had been added. And I thought, don't remember this, what is it? And I'll try and demonstrate now what the timing was, because I've never done this before. If anyone's familiar with the Superman song, the tempo is dum, 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 like you hear that, you know. And the bit in the middle, the guitar, what Mick had put in, it sort of went da 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 3 times. Da 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 da. Woody did it, played all of it, drum fills on it, great job. But what they asked me to do, and I asked Mick afterwards, did you have to do this? And he said no. What they asked me to do was accent the first bit, so I had to go da 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 da, then a drum fill, ba 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 ba, and then go back into a different tempo. I mean, this is prog rock. This is what King Crimson will be doing, or, you know. Yes. You know, and I'm supposed to... And normally you would say, well, I'll tell you what, John hadn't heard this bit. Let's just go over that a little bit a few times till John gets it and we'll do it. No, I just stopped and we'll start again. And I'm thinking, here it comes again, you know. And it's like, about the 3rd time, and I just couldn't... they never told me. I already played it through before without this bit in. So then that's when Mick comes right up to the console and he says, come on, it's fucking easy. Which that's going to make you play a lot better, innit, when somebody comes direct to you, you know. Oh, thanks, Mick, I'll get it now. Cheers, you know. You know. So David could see what was going on, so he says, come on, John, we'll have a bit of a break. Let's have a bit of a break. So David, Angela, and myself, we went to a club around the corner called the Shas Club. Remember, this is about 1 in the morning. The Ship Inn's around the corner. Obviously, the pubs are shut then, so I remember going in this Shas Club. Never been in before, feeling real down, you know. I think we got a bottle of beer or something. But as we sat down there, and David saying, come on, it'll be all right, you know. And do you remember them laughing bags, them little yellow laughing bags you could pull and use a bit real daft, you know? Well, there was someone and he was quite drunk, and David knew him. Apparently, he was one of the members of Ashton, Gardner and Dyke, who did Resurrection Shuffle. And he kept having it, and he was drunk, and this thing kept going off and laughing, and he's got, you know, and he was getting everyone's nerve, and he sort of picked it up and sort of went, rah, rah, and he straight out the wall, it went, bang, and we thought, oh, smashed a bit. It just dropped and then went, ha, 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 ha. Well, the wheel just fell apart, and that sort of broke the ice a bit, you know what I mean? So we went back to the studios, and I did it, or should I say, I got through it, you know, and I got through it. And someone once quoted it, someone who was here today, and he mentioned about the lineup, and it says, yeah, and the lyrics changed on the song Superman, and John Cambridge's dodgy drumming. And I thought, well, that's a bit cruel, you know, dodgy. He's not a drummer who put this in. I thought, why have you got to put that in, dodgy drumming? This is about 12 years ago. So, and that is why it was dodgy drumming, because I didn't know the bloody thing. And I mentioned it to Woody earlier on today, and he said he couldn't have played the same thing anyway, you know what I mean? So it was one of them things. So, but while we was there, I suppose Mick Ronson and Tony Visconti were in the console, and that's when they got talking and saying, oh, you know, we've got to get rid of John. Couldn't do that bit. But I think, I don't know, sometimes looking back, I don't know whether I was set up or not, I don't know. I mean, if you're a penalty taker for a football team and you miss one penalty, they don't say, well, you're not taking any more. I'd done all Davy's album before that, no problems, you know. And the next day, funny enough, after that, I went and did a session with Tony, again, Visconti, for Mark Bolan. And then the next day after that, it was 3 on the trot, we recorded all the songs again at Paris Studios for a BBC documentary. So it looked like and I think a fortnight after that sort of happened, I was out.
How did he break the news to you?
You want to know what this stepladder is? I was on this stepladder, painted David's ceiling. Yeah. When they say climb the ladder to success, I was climbing the ladder to failure. His ceiling in his bedroom, it was real ornate, you know, it wasn't like you couldn't get a roller and go over it, you know. In fact, there's another thing. I said, David says, John, you're a decorator. I said, no, I'm a plasterer. I'm work on the buildings. I said, I'm painting the bloody ceiling. So, and I said, you can't do it with a roller. I don't think rollers are out then. So he said, I remember going to a DIY store. We'll buy a paint sprayer. And it was like a little glass jar like that with a plastic tube coming out. And you fill that up with paint, and it's electric. So I got to the top of the thing, but there was no power, no pressure, so it was no good anyway, so I couldn't use it. So anyway, I ended up painting this ceiling one day. And outside of Haddon Hall, it was like a pebble drive, pebbles, and I could hear the car coming round. And I've got the window open, obviously, because it's for the fumes. And I hears the door slam, and I hears Angie's voice. You could hear Angie's anyway. And she went something like, come on, David, you got to tell him, you got to tell him, you got to. And I also remember David saying, but John's a mate, he's a mate. You got to tell him, you got to tell him. So I'm thinking, oh, talking about me. So I'm on the ladder, and David comes into his bedroom and he shuts the door behind him. John, come and sit down, he says. He said, I want to wave. So he said, you know, we're going to let you go, we're going to get another drummer. We said, we want someone who's going to, what he said was, we're going to get someone who can help with arrangements and that. He said, you don't have to go now, you can stay, you know, days, whatever, as long as you like. And I thought, and I was, obviously, so I went into the bedroom where Mick and Roger the Roadie was. And I don't know what I did. I don't know whether I just sort of went under the covers and fell asleep, or, you know, I don't know. And then, but the next day, in the morning, I said to David, no, I'm going. I'll go, I'm not staying here, I'm going. And I didn't have no money to get, no petrol to get, you know. So I had to borrow a fiver off David. I said, David, can you lend me a fiver? And apparently I'd done some sessions, so they said, yeah, you know, we'll take the money out your sessions when it comes. And as I'm loading all my gear, this will be about 8:30 in the morning, Mick Ronson and Roger the Roadie, they're all in separate matches in the room. I'm clanging and making as much noise as I can, you know. Never woke up, never sort of like pretending I was asleep, you know. And I drove home, but I always remember driving home. And I always remember my dad, he was reading his paper, and he used to always look at, and in them days, you can only earn big money by the Littlewoods polls, couldn't you, no lottery then. I remember my dad was saying, how come all the premium bun winners are from Kent? He was saying that, and that stuck in my mind, I don't know why. So on the way home, I thought, I'm in Kent. I stopped at the post office, and I bought 2 premium bonds. Can you imagine now when I have £3 left to get petrol all the way to London? That won't buy you a litre of petrol next week, will it? So, and I bought these premium bonds. And this is, I only saw this about 5 years ago. I'm looking at them because someone said, can you remember the date that you left? And I went, yeah, it was your sort of. And I looked at this, and it looks like when the stamp, it looks like it says, I.O. Boy. I.O. Boy, father. Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, when Tony Visconti sent me a letter, handwritten letter with me checking for the session, it says on it something like, John, we couldn't take the money out with the cheque because it was named to you sort of thing. But he says, can you please let David have that money, like, because he's uptight for bread at the moment. So I've got a letter saying from Bowie, can I have that fiver back? Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you didn't give up. You went into other bands as well, didn't you? And
yeah.
We cover that in the book in great detail. But then, some years later, there's you with Hutch, I think.
Yeah, John Hutchinson. John played with David with Hermione in Feathers. That's John in the middle.
Also stayed friends with Hutch, right?
Yeah, and I've stayed friends. I played. Well. Sadly, John died last year, and he did a CD about 3 or 4 years ago, which I went and played some drums for him on it. A good old friend.
And then we have another myth to bust, I think. In 1989, John Cambridge talked his way in at the stage door at Bradford for Tin Machine.
Yeah, I didn't talk my way in. This Tin Machine, this was like 1989. I'd left David in 1970, so I hadn't seen him for 19 years. And I got a phone call, will I come to Viking Radio on the Saturday and do an interview? David's playing at St George's Hall, Bradford. So I went there, and as I sat down, they said, is that right, you're going tomorrow to give David that £5 back? Well, my first thing was, well, oh, sorry, how did you know that? Oh, we've heard you're going to go. No, I said, I'm not going to, I'm not even going. I said, I'm at work, actually, and I was being a plasterer and self-employed. Sunday morning, Sunday was just a wet day for self-employed. And so I'm just plastering, but I thought, I'll put Viking Radio on it, and it kept coming on. John Cambridge is going to see David Bowie. And I thought, aye, you know. And after a while, I thought, and it got to be about 11:30, and I thought, maybe somebody's telling me something here, maybe I should go. So I thought, yeah, I'll go, you know. So I went back home and got changed and ready. And Grom Kelly lives in Bradford. Grom Kelly was the singer from Junie's Eyes. So I rang Grom up and I said, Grom, going to Bradford, Bowie's on there. Do you fancy coming? Yeah, I'll meet you there. So as I get to St George's Hall, and this would be about 1 o'clock, 1:30. So I go straight to this stage door and I said, has David arrived yet? No, he's not here yet. So where'd you go? I went to the nearest bar, which is just like across the road. So I sat at the bar, I'm talking to him, and I was supposed to be playing drums that night at a club. I was a resident drummer at a sort of local club. And I rang my mate up, remember, no mobiles, and I just said, can you get a standing drummer tonight, because I'm going to see Bowie? Yeah, don't worry, no problem, we'll sort that out. So, and I remember I was in the bar, and the phone rang in the bar, and somebody shouted out, remember, this is in Bradford, nobody knows me, is John Cambridge in the bar? And I thought, oh, who's this? John Cambridge, yeah. It's your wife's on the phone. Your wife? So I put, yeah. I said, how did you know I was here? She said, I just looked up the nearest pub to see. I said, I knew you'd be there. Sherlock Holmes, honestly. So she said, I'm just ringing to tell you that they can't get a drummer tonight. You know, but my mate said, he said, don't worry. He said, you know, you're going to see a boy, they'll get by. Oh, fair enough then. So I'm talking with Grom and it got again. So we went back again about 3 o'clock. Has David come yet? No, ain't come. And I think we went back another couple of times and I had a couple of pints and it sort of be about 5:30 and Grom said, oh, I'm going home now. He said, I'm not waiting. So I thought, yeah. And by this time, I could see there'd been a bit of a crowd round this sort of stage door. I thought, I'm going to have one more time. I'm just going to go to the door. And there's a bloke there with a clipboard. And I just said, are you the stage manager? He said, yeah. I said, I'm just an old friend of David. Can you just pass a message to him? I said, can you just tell him it's John Cambridge, an old friend? I said, I'd just like to have a word, you know. I said, if he's busy and I said, I quite understand. I said, I'm just going back to Hull. You know, so he said, hold on there a minute. He'd only been gone about 30 seconds. He come back and he went, come in. You know. So I goes backstage. And this is when it was a tin machine. And if you can imagine, this is the stage and there's like a wall there. So I'm behind the wall and there's all these big flight cases and I'm just sat on this flight case. And this drummer comes up and he's sort of setting his drums up in front of me. He probably thought I was one of the roadies, didn't know I was. And I'm just saying, oh, are you the drummer? And he said, yeah. He said, we had a bit of a draw to see who backs him. I said, oh, nice. And you know what I mean? And he's sort of setting his drums up with that. With that, I hears the music stop. And I sort of turned round and there was like a sort of corridor. And I saw a boy walk past the corridor and he stopped and he come up to a manager and went, John, how are you doing? And big up and, you know, how are we doing, mate? You know, we just carried on, you know, laughing and joking. This drummer went. And I had my camera with me. And I said, can you take us a photo? And he went, you know. So this is the photo, you know, of what we took. Yeah. So he's talking to me and he's, I get my autograph book out and I thought, I've got in my autograph book, I've got the Beatles in it, I've got the Stones in it, I've got Jimi Hendrix in it. And I thought, I might as well get a boy in it, I might as well have a boy in it. So I took my autograph book with him and I'm telling him the stories. When I'm working on the building sites, and this actually happened a lot, it doesn't now, but it did then. And people have come in and people outside and say, oh, you know the plasterer in there used to play with David Bowie? Did he? So they come in and say, is that right? You play? And I'll be plastering the wall. Did you play with David Bowie? And at first I was like, yeah, and I felt real, yeah, you know. But then it got real annoying. I'd be plastering the wall and the wall's starting to set. And you play it? And I was like, got time to talk. And so I'd say, yeah, and Elvis, Frank Sinatra, did them all. Did them all, mate, did them all. And I thought, oh, he's taking the mick. So they didn't bother me. So I'm telling David this story, and I said, I just want to sign me autograph book, Dave, so he's signing it. And as he's signing it, he's laughing, he's going. And I'm thinking, it's taking a long time signing David Bowie. And this is what he put. For John, nice to meet you, but please stop telling people you used to work with me. It's just not true, and people know it.
While he was looking through the book, he saw another autograph, didn't he?
And while he's looking through the book, he saw this one of Johnny Kidd. And Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, and he's sort of, oh, Johnny Kidd, he said, we've been having a go at Shaking All Over. I don't know whether you know, if you're old enough to remember that song by Johnny Kidd. And he said to me, I don't know the words. He said, do you know the first bit? I said, yeah. He said, can you write them down for me? So I said, yeah, I'll write them down, yeah, I'll write them down. And then he says, there's a famous drum fill in Shaking All Over, done by Clem Cattini. Woody will know, what I'm about. And drummers will know if they're any worth of salt, they know. And it doesn't really fit with the song, but it's great. It fits, you know. And he said, do you know the drum fill? And I says, yeah. So, like, his drummer comes out, and I'm sort of tapping on my knees, this sort of drum fill. And I'm thinking, like, there's a drum kit there. Why don't I do it on the drum kit? You know, but I didn't, you know. So we goes backstage, and I just said to David, I said, look, David, give us a contact, you know, to get in touch with you in future. So, but before that, he said, have you got any complimentary tickets? No tickets. And he went, fling his snap, two tickets, which you've seen, and 2 free tickets. So I said, give me your number. So he said, and he was living in Switzerland then, so he said, I won't give you me Switzerland number, he said, but I'll give you Eileen, who was his secretary. He said, Eileen is in contact with me every day. He said, you know, so if you get in touch with me. And honest, to be honest, since then I've always rang her, you know, I've got his personal email as well after that. And he's always got back straight away, you know. So we hit it off, and this time I'm thinking, it's now be about 6 o'clock, and I'm thinking, bloody hell, he's not going to be on till 9:30, at least. From the 3.5 hours, I can't go and have a pants. I'm not really fancy sitting here for 3.5 hours. I'll go back to the club and do the drumming. You know what I mean? So I didn't go. So, and someone actually had said, do you know you got a shout out, John, on stage? But David shouted you out on stage. And I just thought, well, did I? I don't know. And Gary apparently, about 2 months ago?
Shall I explain?
Yeah, you tell me.
In researching the book, John's book, it was great fun. We found all sorts of things out, didn't we, that we didn't know before. But somebody had done a bootleg of the Tin Machine concert at Bradford that night. And I've been trying to sort of fill in some various gaps. John was, where were you at this point, John? You were heading back to play at this little
I'm going back
club.
drumming to the club in Hull.
And David on stage gave you a shout out, didn't he?
Yeah.
Now, we've actually found that very recently, haven't we? So, can we play that now?
If you listen, it's very quick, but listen.
All right. My mate John Cambridge used to work with me in, like 20 years ago in a band before the Spiders. Where are you, John? Where? He's up there. He's up there somewhere. Anyway, he gave me the verse for this next one, which we were making about with the sound check. I didn't know it. He knew it, the words, so he wrote it down for me. It's Johnny Kid and the Pirates song. It's Shaking All Over.
Thank you.
Yeah, but he said after that, oh, you know, John wrote the lyrics down for Shaking All Over Me, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. We need to speed up a bit, apparently. We just had the sign. But from then on, you kept in touch very regularly, didn't you? And you had a special request from Iman as well.
Yeah, I got a letter from Imam saying that David's going to... his 50th birthday is coming up, and she put something like, what do you buy something? What do you buy David for his birthday? He's got everything. So she said, I'm having a book compiled of all his friends and people he knows. And he said, can you just write these 2 pages for me and put it in this book and send it back, and a photograph. And on the letter, and it sort of says, I knew how much David thought of you, something like that, you mean. And I just sent it back and said, man, I didn't realise, you know, well, if he's having a one-off book, and I'm in it, you know, the plaster from Hull, there must be Mick Jagger in there and all, you know, and I felt really honoured, you know. So I sent it back, and then I'm saying to my wife, Angela, I'm thinking, I wonder if he's having a party, you know. And he was. And I got an invite to his 50th. I'm thinking it's going to be in London. No, New York. Couldn't afford to go, honestly, couldn't afford to go. So I borrowed the money to go, went to go. And, he'd played at Madison Square Gardens previous, and then it was straight to this private party. So me and Angela, we left early, went to the private party, got there first, and we was the first one there. And it was a massive, big, it looked like, well, it was an artist studio, and we sat right in the corner out of the way. Funny enough, nobody sat with us. But I'm seeing all these famous people coming in. And David's table was sort of right in the middle. He was right in the middle of his table. And he was showing him come in, and everyone's sort of good talking to him. And I thought, I'll wait till they've all said the bits, you know, and I'll wait till there's a bit of time. And then I'll go over and say hello, you know what I mean? But there was never any, every time somebody came up to him, somebody else came in. And this must have been half an hour. And so I see Iman walking down towards us. Now remember, Iman doesn't know me, and but I know what she looks like. So I just went up to her and I just said, oh, Iman. And I said, oh, Iman. I said, it's John Cambridge. I just got in and she went, John! You know, so he must have talked to her. Come with me. And I went. So she grabbed hold of my hand and she marched right to the middle, you know, to where Davy was. And he's at the table. She's got his back to him. And she sort of went, tapped him on the shoulder like that. And he's talking away. And he didn't turn around. And so she massaged his back. Like that. And he turned round again and he went, see him again, John, how you doing, mate? Well, you know. just like we had a big natter again, and I'd gone to the toilets, and remember it's somebody's house, went to the toilets. While I'm there, my wife says, can we have a photo? And David knew my wife. He said, can we have a photo, you and John? And he said, give her 1 minute, Angela. And he said, and I'll be there, you know. And so there was photographers there, but they wasn't allowed to take any photos, you know. I never saw any flashes going off. So he walked up to me and said, right, where's this camera? To Angela. This is one of the photos Andrew took afterwards. And it was supposed that's George Underwood, you know, who did David's eyes, you know. And I know George as well. And David is not supposed to be on this photo. He's photobombed us. You don't see him. Honestly, he's like... looks like the bloody Joker, doesn't he? You know, you don't really, you know, so he's still messing about like we are, like we're kids, big kids. And so took the photo, but Andrew had this little flash, you know, then with like a cube on the top, you know. And when these two photographers come in, they thought, oh, somebody's taking a photo. So they thought he was there right to take a photo. So as soon as Ange went up and took the photo, the two photographers did. And I think it's only their flashes from their cameras what made that one come out, you know. And that's the one on the front of the book.
And you stayed in touch quite frequently from then on, didn't you? Obviously?
Yeah, I mean, for the past, before he died, 20 years, got a Christmas card every year, and we used to send daft emails to each other. I even sent him I even got a Christmas card the December before he died in January, and I sent him a real daft email about me and Hutch. It was a photo, actually.
Show that in a moment.
Yeah.
Just by way of winding up, John. I mean, we know there's a lot of people from Hull who are connected with David's career. People like Stewie George.
Stewie George, yeah, he wouldn't mind it. Big friend of mine, Stewie.
And Hutch and other people. And in the book, there's in a lot more detail, there's accounts of those different things. I'm afraid we need to wind up now. So what we thought we'd do, we haven't done this before, so I hope it works. One of the things at the end of the book that I really enjoyed putting in, I insisted I thought should go in, was an email exchange between John and David, which I just thought was priceless, really, and it finishes off the book really nicely, and says a lot, really, about the relationship. So shall I be David? And
go on, then,
John?
you'll be David.
We'll try it, shall we? Right, so here we go. Is this you, John?
This had come just out of the blue. This would be an email from David. I said, hi, Dave. Yes, it's me, Kimbo. Is that proof? Is everything okay with you? Belated birthday greetings. All the best, John C.
I'm still suspicious. How many moles do you have on the bottom of your left foot? How do you know this is me? Who am I? Where am I? What's happening? The real DB. To which you replied...
Back, firstly, how did you know I had a bottom on my left foot? Secondly, I know it's you because I'd recognise your typing anywhere. You are you, and you are there, and that's what's happening. This proves I'm JC.
And a later one.
Hi, Dave. Just thought I'd drop you a keep in touch line. How are you keeping? Fit and well, I hope. I've just left a band called the Sectionals. Now I'm an exceptional drummer. All the best, keep laughing, John.
To which David replied,
yeah.
What the fuck are you doing with an iPad? Give it back to that kid, pronto.
The kids have bought me an iPad, yeah, so I put, I will, but stop calling me pronto.
That's a joke, surely.
Okay, Shirley is better than pronto.
And there are lots more in the book as well, but that's just a selection of. We need to finish, John, so we'll just finish with what you mentioned a short while ago. Which
was John Hutchison, he came to see me at a pub. So I thought I'll have a photo taken. So I got this photo taken, and I just sent this to David. This was in December, just before he died in January. And I just put, because he knows us both really well, and all I put was, hi, David, do you recognise these two old gits? And he replied, re-Yorkies. Stig backwards, laugh out loud. If anybody's familiar with Stig of the Dump in the old cartoon, Stig was a caveman, so he's suggesting we're both bloody cavemen.
I'll just flash a few things up at the end. Recent release that you played out, this Width of a Circle compilation, John, and a big surprise, thanks to help from Kevin.
Yeah, well, I got a gold disc. I finally got a gold disc, you know. Yeah. And it says there, presented to John Cambridge. Do you know who presented it to me? The bloody postman. Oh, for this, mate. Cheers, mate. Thank you. One last thing, can I just say? I'll just say that because I meant to mention this because I'm a big believer in fate, and we're going to go back to the premium bonds. And a lot of people don't know this, but I'm so glad I bought them £2 premium bonds because you know how much money I've won on them since then?
How much?
Fuck all.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. It's been a real pleasure. John Cambridge. John.